Hello, my name is Nicholas. Now today I'm going to tell you a story of what may have seemed like a typical day to any normal intern. But there was nothing normal about today. To understand my horror, I want you to do a few things before I continue reading. Firstly, turn off all the lights. Utter darkness, the only light radiating from your computer screen. Secondly, make sure there is utter silence. Not a sound, no television, no music, no talking. Lastly, make sure you are alone. You'll see why soon enough, and how you soon will see. It was my first day as an intern at Nickelodeon Studios. They picked me up after receiving my associate's degree from ITT Tech. It was a stupid school, but it taught me what I needed for this chance. Running donuts and making coffee sucked. I can't tell you that much. But it had perks. Me being on the road of editor, I sometimes received the opportunity to see episodes before they were officially released. Today I was invited to the editing studio, but you see it was odd. There was no one there. Normally this would cost me my internship. Oh God, I couldn't resist the urge. It was overwhelming, incomposing. Oh God, that feeling. As soon as I walked in, the door slammed behind me. I figured this was one of those somewhat cruel pranks the editors sometimes pull on the new guys. So when the door locked, I figured this was some kind of punishment, and my heart slowly sank. My internship was in huge jeopardy. Oh, they probably already knew I was here. Panicking, I ran to the door with all my force, slamming in with all my might. Now, not to boast, but I was not the weakest guy. I had been working out for the past 3 years, but dear Lord, there was something on the other side of that door. Some force stronger than the strongest man, making sure I didn't leave until I did what I was sent in to do. Now in my panic, I hadn't noticed the notebook, the chair, and so did the small table it was sitting on. In the desk tray, there was a blank CD. Usually there were editing discs, completely cherry episodes of just barely leaving production. It didn't have any markings or even a name, but something beckoned me. Something pushed me into the chair and forced me to sit. As I slowly pulled the chair back, my heart rate slowly increased. You could almost hear it in my chest. Thump, thump, thump. I slowly pushed the DVD tray shut, without any prompt or confirmation. It just started. Something seemed odd strangely right away. Normally it would open to the VLC or Windows Media Player. However, this was odd. It was just open with no video player. It seemed like the computer itself was just a video player. But it couldn't be. It seemed just like any normal netbook with the interns or staff carried. Or was it? As the title card flashed, I immediately see my first assumption was wrong. It wasn't cherry or slightly edited build. They would never had the title cards. This was either finished, nor was just ready to leave production. The title card seemed odd. I had never seen anything like it. Instead of the usual fun font they used and popped up and seemed colorful, of course they appealed more to children. It seemed more gothic, something you would see in a horror film. The words in the title card made my heart sink further. It had to be a joke, right? Why would they try someone scare me this terribly, though? The words read, "You nosy intern, you shouldn't have come here," and the usual happy bubble translation that were used was all gone. The text just melted down to the screen, almost like blood running through a wall, and it slowly faded into the show a couple of seconds of utter silence. It transitioned into the old familiar openings, with SpongeBob slowly snoring in bed and Gary sleeping beside him on the newspaper. The blowhole of the alarm clock was there, but the bed was. I began to feel relieved. I remember all this from when I was a kid. It seemed normal, wasn't it? Oh dear God, I was wrong. Forgive me, you must forgive me. I am choked up, just writing this. I wanted to forget this, but something compels me to share my story. I was expecting the blowhole to go off and SpongeBob to start his typical routine. Oh, that bad thing being annoyed me as a kid, but it didn't come. There must have been at least just 3+ minutes, just of SpongeBob snoring. Then something finally happened. It started to slowly pan to his face, oh so slowly, waiting for anticipation, just dying for something to finally happen. I would later really regret this decision. Oh, what I would give it if it just ended right then and there. As I finally reached up to its face, You clearly could see his expression. It was one of horror, malice, one someone in the terrible nightmare would have. His eyes almost seemed as if they had been stitched shut. It then had a transition, not the usual fade to black or the joyful bubbles, but something altogether much more sinister. It was a fiery transition, almost like the previous screen had just burned up. By the appearances were now in SpongeBob's mind and his dream, his nightmare. It appeared to be in Bikini Bottom. Oh, but there was something very, very wrong. The whole city seemed in shambles, the horizon blood red, the buildings burning. SpongeBob was just walking down the road, what seemed to be the typical path he normally take to the Krusty Krab. The people around him, oh dear God, I still remember it. The blood-curdling screams. At this moment I realized that there was something really wrong. This had no appeal to children. Hell, most adults would find this a bit morbid at this point. The scream was one of the most someone in great pain, being tortured or slowly dying. A blood-curdling scream. At this point I couldn't see who it was coming from. Just SpongeBob walking slowly, silently, as the screaming slowly continued, getting louder and louder. Oh God, I almost wanted to claw my eyes out when he turned the corner. I saw the source of the screams. It was terrifying, horrible, and human. It was Patrick hammered into the stake, almost like crucifixion of Jesus Christ. But also his stomach. Oh God, it had been torn open. His entrails were slowly leaking out. The look on his face seeing SpongeBob. He seemed relieved for a moment, almost as if his salvation had come. His eyes began to water, just staring at SpongeBob, almost beckoning. His eyes spoke for him. They screamed, "Oh, please, God, help me!" Then it transitioned over to SpongeBob, and now he just stood there, staring back at Patrick, watching his friend slowly suffer and die. Patrick then began to weep slowly, almost as if understanding something. That was the viewer I did not. SpongeBob then began to open his mouth. Slowly, in a low, almost satanic, demonic voice, he whispered, "Suffer, fat one. You this whole town brought upon themselves." And then he turned and slowly walked away. At this moment, I screamed out in horror, almost praying that someone would hear me. Someone would walk in and it would cost me my internship. But anything to end this. Now you may find yourself thinking, why don't you just stand up and attempt to once more escape? I couldn't. Something deep down inside me told me that if I moved, I would have regretted it. I had to finish watching. I just had to. SpongeBob continued down the road, slowly approaching the Krusty Krab. In the background, you can now hear more screams. Some were horrible, blood-curdling ones. You could tell that they came from one of great agony, but there had been a new sound thrown in. Horrible twist laugh, one of great malice, almost as if someone had been hunting an animal and thoroughly enjoying himself all too much. You can hear them very distinctively fading away into the background, as if they were chasing someone. Something in the other direction, you could hear them. Oh, it even faded. It was still heart-stopping. SpongeBob seemed unfazed, as if he was almost used to it. You can now slowly hear the clattering behind him, slowly breaking the mind-numbing silence. It sounded almost as if something was crawling slowly towards him. SpongeBob then slowly turned, as if he expected this, and as he slowly turned, his face slowly came into view. His eyes, they changed. They no longer seemed to be as happy, normal, joyful looking eyes. They were blood red and full of malice, hate, anger. One would expect this face from a demon. Hell, even the devil himself would find this look fitting. I myself now slowly began to weep, with no end of this horror in sight. His eyes were now fixed on something. It slowly transitioned over. It was Patrick. Dear God, oh my God, forgive me. No human should be forced to see that. His entire lower body was missing, with his intestines slowly trailing behind him, the trail of blood behind him. That was what's left of his arms had huge holes in them, almost as if something had been torn out of them. The nails, he ripped them off from the stake. His face slowly came up. His eyes beckoned once more to SpongeBob, but this time they had said something very different. He slowly began to speak, and I'll never forget those words. "Kill me, please. I'm sorry. We're all sorry. Just end it, please. I can't take the pain." SpongeBob responded with a hellish tone, even worse than before. "You asked for forgiveness from me? Do you take me as your god? You will receive no divine forgiveness from me. You see, it's my job to make you suffer. Burn, fat one." And with the flick of a wrist, hellish arms, seemed to have sprouted from the ground and grabbed a hold of him and tore him down into what seemed like an endless, hellish abyss. All the way down, you could hear blood-curdling scream from before. "Oh God, no, no, no!" Then SpongeBob slowly turned, as if nothing happened. He let out a small evil giggle. By this point, I had been almost wishing for the same thing to happen to me, just so I wouldn't have to see this anymore. At this point, I was crying so hard, I almost felt like a little girl. I felt weak and empty, almost as if I was about to throw up. As much as I wanted to, I just couldn't choke anything out. SpongeBob then slowly approached. Finally, the doors of the Krusty Krab. The path behind him. Oh God, the usual cheery path to the entrance had stakes along it. They were all hammered to the corpses of our favorite characters. Sandy, Mr. Krabs, Larry the Lobster, Pearl, Squidward, Merman, and Barnacle Boy, Miss Puff, broken. Turning to her, I had this uncontrollable urge. Turning to Tina, I said, "Don't thank God on this day. He won't save us. He has abandoned us, his abominations, his failed creations." Tina looked aghast, horrified. She ran out screaming. I quickly got up and quickly left, and then I sat there, writing this story on the day. Calmly now, maybe I'll be able to accept my place. Oh, and I have work to do. Isn't that right, Tina? Slowly turning to a dismembered body. "You're next." As I end with this, I am coming. I am his chosen slayer to this world, a messenger of hell itself. Oh, and I'm coming for you, each and every one of you, and you'll never stop me. Don't try to run or hide. I'll find you.